Hello everyone. Good morning. I hope you are able to hear me.
Yes, sir.
Well, I welcome you to the online class being organized by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, and we are dealing with MA English Paper 7, that is aspects of language and their relation to literature. We began yesterday talking about Indian literature and Indian literary tradition at length. We looked at multiple aspects of Indian literary tradition, and specifically, we had a fruitful discussion on some classical literary traditions, which affects or which are related to uh, performative arts. Okay? And to begin with, we took up Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra and try to realize, how at least a few thousand years ago, this tradition of uh, these literary traditions began, and how Bharat Muni uh, penned down or produced a wonderful treatise on performative arts. And we also tried to comprehend and understand the definition of performative art and the goal of art given by Bharat Muni in his theory Natya Shastra. And we realized that according to Bharat Muni, the ultimate goal of any performative art, right, whether it is a music concert or dance, right, or any other art form, uh, the primary goal is to take the reader into an alternate or a different realm, right, where uh, the audience, where the persons who are watching it, where the person who are viewing it, should experience wonder, and at the same time should be in a position to think on higher spiritual and moral questions. At the same time, right, at the same time, the treatise of Bharat Muni says in Natya Shastra that the secondary goal of such a performance is to entertain. Okay, and yes, and then uh, these particular theory of thousands of years old, thousands of years old theory has inspired other people, especially Abhinava Gupta, who came up with Abhinava Bharati as another text, right, uh, which has multiple reviews and commentaries. Okay. After that, we also looked at the difference between BC, BCE, AD, CE terms, right? And then we moved on to Abhinava Gupta's Rasa theory, right? And we also realized and understood that the word rasa, which is a Sanskrit word, means taste, essence, flavor, or sap or juice. Okay, and at least 500 to 700 years later, Abhinava Gupta took inspiration from Natya Shastra and he came up with his own theory, that is rasa theory. And according to this theory, uh, principal human feelings, right, are delight, laughter, sorrow, anger, energy, fear, disgust, heroism, and astonishment. Okay, and these human feelings uh, take, right, various rasa forms as rasa, that is uh, erotic, comic, pathetic, furious, heroic, terrible, odious, marvelous, and quietistics. So these were a few things we discussed in the previous class. Now today we will be moving on to another classical literary tradition rooted in our culture, rooted in our country. That is Panini's Astadhyayi. This is related to the grammar. This theory is related to grammar. That is why I have to indicated that in the brackets. I need a volunteer to read these 3 points on the screen. If you are connected with each other, I request one of the student to read the bullet points on the screen. Then we will discuss them. Are you able to hear me? Am I connected with you? Yesterday we had a very interactive and interesting class, and I expect and I wish that same enthusiasm continues in this class as well. Anyone volunteer from the?
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Panini's Ashtadhyayi. The
Hmm.
Ashtadhyayi is
Ma'am, I think your connection is lost.
which is further divided into quarter chapters. It defines morphology and syntax of Sanskrit language and distinguishes between usage in the spoken language and is the language of the sacred texts.
Okay, so I think in the initial uh, points we missed because of weak connection. So what I'll do is I'll
Okay.
just repeat that. Panini's Ashtadhyayi, right?
Yes, sir.
This treatise is related to grammar. Okay. And Panini's grammar is considered the world's oldest grammar and world's first I think proper treatise on grammar in any language. Okay. So this Ashtadhyayi is actually a treatise on grammar. It is generative as well as descriptive. So people familiar with language, they know that grammar it could be of either generative in nature or descriptive in nature, right? And there are two different types of grammar. Okay. Now this treaty sums up in 4,000 sutras, the science of phonetics and grammar that had evolved in the Vedic religion. Okay. Now we know that for a very very long time knowledge was limited to the uh, uh, the learned people. Okay, a very specific set of people in India, and those people were associated with uh, propagating the religion and safeguarding the religion, right? And in our country, we know them as Brahmins. So the Brahmins has the access to knowledge, and they were the people who had exclusive privilege of not only producing language and literature, but also preserving it. Okay, so that is why whatever classical, literary or otherwise, other forms of knowledge that we see today uh, was, with these, specific set of people. Okay, they were rooted in religion. That is why, these particular treatise of Panini, okay, which has, 40,000 sutras. Sutras, I think, means, a verse, if I am not wrong, right? So these 40,000 sutras, related to phonetics and grammar, right? Uh, and these 40,000 sutras haven't come up overnight, but they were written over a period of time. Okay, and it all happened in one particular era, right? We call it, I know, the Vedic era, Vedic, religion. Okay, so this Panini, okay, the philosopher, right? He divided his work into 8 different chapters, each of which is further divided into quarter chapters. Okay. Now you think for a moment that, today when we have access to technology and we have access to, global knowledge production, right? We know that, how things are structured. Hmm? Uh, if you want to write a book today, right? You structure it in a very beautiful way, right? You will have your title page or cover page. Then there could be a page where you list down all the topics that one can find in the book, that is table of content, right? You dedicate that book to somebody, right? You also may have acknowledgements page, right? And then actual chapters. And at the end of the book, you may want to give extra information in the form of annexures, in the form of, glossary, right? And the back of the page also will have some extra information. So this is what nothing but the structuring of the whole, work, which we are familiar with right now in the age of technology. But, going back to, thousands of years, right, where Panini was, conceptualizing these, sutras, he was contemplating about, the language and the grammar, right? That was the time when there were no such, texts which were structured, right? It is very, difficult to, to even think that, there could be a book and the book can be, uh, structured it that way. So the knowledge of, organizing a book, organizing a work into different, chapters, sub chapters, right? And each one dealing with a different, subtopic or topic, was something, quite novel, quite, innovative, right? So not only the work, which is, recognized and given importance, but the very uh, uh, the very idea uh, of Panini dividing the work into different, chapters and sub-chapters shows us how organized, okay, Panini's mind was, and how much far ahead he was from his time. Okay, so yes, so he divided the whole work into, 8, different chapters. Okay, now it defines morphology and syntax of Sanskrit language. Now we know that, in the Vedic times, right? Uh, the only language in India which was, uh, in which, literature and philosophy was being produced was Sanskrit language. We again, I am as we discussed in the previous class that, in India we have two different, major divisions, right? The northern part and the southern part. So in the northern part, the dominant, language of literature or literary language or language of the learned people was Sanskrit. That doesn't mean that there were no other languages spoken in the country even at that time. There were languages, so people were speaking different dialects, right? But no other language, perhaps, right? Uh, Apart from, I think, Pali, right, had this script. Okay, and script was something was available in so far I know was Sanskrit and Pali language. All other languages spoken by different people, in rural areas, in urban areas, and in forests, right? Uh, were dialects which we are hardly familiar with. Similarly, when we come down to southern part of India, even thousands of years ago, there was this Dravidian languages, right? And within that, Tamil was one such language where there was a script, okay, and they were also producing literature in the Tamil language. So similarly, in the upper northern part of the country, Sanskrit was the language of the elite, language of the people of knowledge, and it is the language in which a lot of literature was produced, right? Religious and other forms of literature also. So, for example, this particular Ashtadhyayi is, in a strict sense, is not a religious text, right? Whereas Vedas and Upanishads were religious texts. So both religious texts were produced in Sanskrit, and other forms of philosophical and non-philosophical uh, works were produced in Sanskrit language, because that is the dominant language or mainstream language of that time, okay, which had its own script. Okay. Yes, so this work of Panini, Ashtadhyayi, which is divided into 8 different chapters. So it primarily talks about morphology and syntax of Sanskrit language. Okay. The morphology, what does morphology mean? Can anyone volunteer an answer? What is morphology and what is syntax?
That's the smallest form of the smallest unit that make a word is known as
Morpheme, yeah. So
morpheme.
actually, yeah, morphology is the study of formation of words. Okay, it is related to word and word formation, right? So that is why you rightly gave a definition that the smallest unit of a word is called morpheme. Okay, and whereas syntax is,
Arrangement of words.
yeah, it is the study of the structure, right? So and how sentences are or phrases are arranged. Okay. Uh,
Yes.
so one is related to the study of
Formation
uh,
of words.
words and their formation, whereas second is the study of the arrangement of that word, right? Structure is nothing but arrangement of different words in a particular
Yes, sir.
sequence, right? In English, we have S plus V plus O, right, where we arrange subject first with one or more than one word, and then we have verb, one or more than one word, again, then object, again, same, right? One or more than one word. So this is how we, structure things in a normal sentence in an English. But if you go to some other language, right, you may not have this sequence, right? For example, I eat banana is an example in English, right, where you have I as subject, eat as verb, and banana as object. Now, if you say same thing in Telugu, how do you say it? Can you translate? Can you please translate that? Anybody? I eat banana.
Word comes.
Can you
Word
translate this
comes.
sentence? I eat banana.
నేను బనానా నేను అరటిపండు తిన్నాను వెర్బ్ లాస్ట్ లో వచ్చింది ఇక్కడ
So నేను అరటి పండు తినాను,
తిన్నాను.
right? So నేను is subject, arati pandu is object, and tinnanu is verb, right?
That comes
So
last.
which means in Telugu the sequence is subject, object, and verb.
Yeah.
I think similar is or same is the way in which Urdu works, right? मैंने मौज खाया है, right? या मैं मौज खाता हूँ, I eat banana, right? So in this also you have my, which is I, as subject, mouse, which is banana, right? Arati pandu, and then khaya hai, which is eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So which means which shows that I don't know how it is in Hindi. In Hindi, if you translate that, मैंने केला खाया, right? So Hindi also has same subject, object, and verb thing. Okay. So I think most of Indian languages have that sequence: subject, object, and verb. So verb is the last structure in a sentence. Yeah. So this is this structuring of different word. And its a study. Its a study is nothing but syntax. Okay. So Panini took up Sanskrit language of the day, and studied how words are formed in Sanskrit, and how words are arranged uh, in the language, in making up a sentence. So these are the two different sub areas within the study of the language. When you go and study language in a scientific way, right, then you will go into different sub areas. One is morphology, and the second is syntax. Now coming to morphology, right, we have different methods in English, right? Something that we have studied in relation to English, right? That we have borrowing as one way of word formation, right? And you have so many different ways in which words are formed. One way you borrow some foreign words and new words are formed, right? In some you combine two or more words and then new word is formed, right? Clipping is one, right? And compounding is another way in which words are formed. And also you go even at a word level, the parts within the word level. That's and somebody said that morpheme is the smallest part of the word. So from there we start, right? From letter onwards, the journey goes up, and we look at how words are formed in the word, and we know that there are two different ways, derivation and inflection, through which new words can be formed, right? So coming to syntax, we have after word we have phrase, clause, and sentence, right? Three major units in the structure. So we study about it, and we also study the movement of these structures uh, when we study about types of sentences, right? Interrogative, negative, right? Derivative, all the different declaration and all. So when we study language at a deeper level, we study all these things. So what Panini did some thousands of years ago is that he paid attention to formation of words in Sanskrit and the structuring of words in a sentence in Sanskrit. So based on his understanding, he came up with different ideas pertaining to the morphology and syntax of Sanskrit, and he noted it down in 400 sutras. I think sutra is a Sanskrit word which means actually, I think, verse if I'm not wrong. Shloka and sutra, these are two different things, right? Does sutra mean anybody can volunteer an answer? Sutra means a verse or a phrase. Nobody knows.
I think formula, sir. Sutras means formula.
Sutra is formula. Yeah, yeah. Sutra is formula, or can it also be rules?
Not exactly known about it.
Sutra literally means thread. Okay. And okay, which okay, so it is actually line. Sutra literally means thread, but when we are talking in the context of written text, written piece, or literature, it means line. So poetry is written in lines, right? Which we also call as verse. So my general guess was right. Sutra here means verse or lines. Okay, poetic lines. Yeah, so in general here, this is not basically poetry, but the way it is written may have that poetic characteristics because it's a piece of literature, and that is why a term sutra is used. So there are 4,000 lines written by Panini explaining the morphology and syntax of Sanskrit language. Right? Maybe uh, uh, a group of lines would be talking about one particular subject because these 4,000s are divided into 8 different chapters, and those further divided into quarter chapters. Okay. And apart from that, he also was able to distinguish between spoken language and written language. Right. Now, if you know English, I know English, but when we write English, that language is not same as the language we speak. This is the case with every language. If it is Telugu, you speak Telugu differently, but when you sit down and write something in Telugu, that will be slightly different. Anybody can make it out that yeah, this language is different. This is like different, right? One can easily distinguish between written and spoken language. So that is something Panini was able to identify a few thousand years ago. That written language is different from spoken language, right? In written language, I'll give you one example. In written language, we tend to write complete sentences. Whereas in spoken language, we not necessarily complete a sentence because a part of the meaning comes from the body language, the facial expression, right, and the hand movements and all. So that's why uh, we uh, we usually may not complete the sentences when we are speaking. But when it comes to writing, you make sure that each sentence is complete, and we also supply a lot of punctuation and all those things. Yes, so Panini was able to distinguish between written and spoken language. Here, language of the sacred text means nothing but written language. Okay? So I think we had a fair enough explanation of Panini's Ashtadhyayi. And I think it's time to move on to the another one that is Kuntaka's Vakrokti. Okay. Again, I need volunteer to read these points on the screen. Any volunteer?
Yes, sir. Can I?
Yeah, please go on.
Kuntaka's Vakrokti. Vakrokti Siddhanta or theory of oblique expression. The word Vakrokti consists of two components, Vakra and Ukti. The first component means crooked, indirect, or unique, and the second means poetic expression or speech. It is manifested at 6 levels in language. That is the phonetic level, Varna and Vinyasa, and the lexical level, Pada Purvardha, and the grammatical level, Pada Parardha, and the sentential level, Vakya, the contextual level, Prakarna, and finally the compositional level, Prabandha.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you so
okay, sir.
much. Yeah, thank you so much for your attempt. Kuntaka, this is the fourth literary tradition we are talking about. Kuntaka has come up with his own treatise on Vakrokti. And its full title is Vakrokti Siddhanta. Siddhanta is nothing but theory. Theory of oblique expression. Right. The word Vakrokti consists of two components, Vakra and Ukti. Vakra means crooked, indirect, or unique, whereas Ukti means poetic expression or speech. Okay, so in this particular theory, Kuntaka talks about indirect or crooked speech. Okay, now what it is, if you go to the third point, we'll realize what exactly he is trying to talk about. It is, which is nothing but Vakrokti manifested at 6 levels in language. So what Kuntaka is trying to tell us is that this crookedness in the language, the deviation from the normal, this indirectness, this uniqueness in the usage of the language manifests at 6 levels in language. What are those levels? The first level is phonetic level, right? To which he calls Varna Vinyasa. Phonetics, we know, is the scientific study of speech sounds, right? So at the sound level, crookedness may happen. A deviation from the norm may happen. Can you think of an example? Can you imagine an example? Can you think of an example?
Sir, good morning, sir. Sir,
Good one.
example as in a phonetic sound for what, sir?
A normal phonetic sound, right, has taken a deviant or a changed form. The meaning remains same, but the way it is said is changed.
Like you mean the sound of the alphabet per, the, for?
No, no. Let me give one example. I think you might have seen or watched Amir Khan's movie PK.
Okay.
Right. Now we have one particular word called acha.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now there are multiple deviant or crooked way of saying that. Acha. Acha. Right. So I think Amir Khan as an actor was able to give us multiple variants of it, right?
Yeah.
Which we Indians produce. I'm not American and I'm not able to produce that, but I gave you two examples. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, this is what the deviation or the crookedness at the phonetic level. I gave you it at a word level. It could happen at a phrase level. It could happen at a sentence level also.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the first, example of, or this is the one level of the six, which, Kuntaka talks about, that, crookedness, the indirectness or the uniqueness, sets in or manifests at phonetic level, which he calls Varna Vinyasa. Now the second level is lexical level, which is nothing but Padapur Vardha. Okay. Now lexical level deviation, can you think of an example? Think of an example of, deviation in structure level. Sorry, lexical level.
Using the dictionary.
Now I'll give you one example. How do you distinguish between British English and American English?
The sound of
Accent, sir, accent.
Yes, accent. Very good. That is one. Okay.
and then the sounds,
So,
phonetics, the pronunciations, where the stresses and levels are of different letters, like the R's in the American English, and it's different with the British or the Indian English.
yes. So that is what the description that suits to phonetic level, deviation or crookedness. At a lexical level, now you have labor. How do you spell it? The word labor, how do you spell it?
L-A-B-O-R, L-A-B-O-U-R.
Huh? So do you see a deviation?
Yes, sir.
If the LABOUR is the normal, then LABOR is the deviation. Right? I'm considering the history of English. So British English is the more senior.
Yes, oldest.
Right? More oldest, yes?
Yes.
So we take it British English as the normal, LABOUR spelling. But when it comes to American English, that is a crooked form or a different form of it. Right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And also, that is one example. The other example is, if you have read about, the great vowel shift, then you will also know that, there is a change that has happened at, inflection level. That change is also related to this, lexical, deviation or crookedness, right?
Yes, sir. Like beat and meet and bite.
Yeah. So the spelling of, father in the Shakespearean English or prior to that Middle English was different from the spelling that we are familiar with right now in modern English, right?
Yeah.
So there is a change that has happened, that there is a deviation that has happened, and that deviation later become the normal, and earlier become the, abnormal one, crooked one, right? We are through, working examples, we are trying to understand it. These examples may not be purely academic in nature, right? Because this is not our area of expertise, neither of mine nor of yours. We are trying to just, uh, find some examples to understand what basically Kuntaka means when he describes Vakrokti. Okay. Then there is a deviation at grammatical level also, right? Grammatical rules changing, right? Now there is one rule that bullet point should end with period, and there is also a rule that bullet point should not end with a period. Okay, so it is possible that there may exist two different contradictory rules, but if we study them thoroughly and properly, we'll realize that there was one rule at one point of time, and that rule has changed now to something else. Okay, that is why there is a two different possible rules. So that deviation, that small change leads to larger change at later stage. Okay, and that is how different dialects come up, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
For example, in Urdu, to say no, right? There is a word called nahi. Nahi, N-A-H-I, nahi. But when people who were speaking Urdu language, in particularly in our region, that is Deccan region, right? And somebody might have misspelled it, mispronounced it. Maybe he had some difficulty in opening his complete mouth. Don't know what, for whatever reason,
It says like, for example, gaye,
it changed to a nako.
Hai.
So nahi has deviated, and its deviated or its crooked form has become standard in Deccani as nako instead of nahi. For the same sense, same meaning, you have a different changed sound, that is nako. So there may be examples in each language, including in Telugu also, right? So similarly, grammatical deviation also happens, crookedness also happens, and sentential level, at a sentence level, that is vakya, and at a contextual level also, prakarana, and finally the compositional level, prabandha. Now, a few of these could be understood only in the context of poetry, in a written composition. Okay? And I'll give you an example. We took up example of a standard English sentence. A standard English sentence will have subject, verb, and object, right? That is the standard. Now, I'll give you one example. You tell me whether that is strictly speaking correct or not. I came, I saw, I concurred. Right. These are the words of one great conqueror. I think it's by Alexander or Napoleon. Right. Now tell me, I came, I saw, I conquered. Are they normal sentences? Yes. Are they normal sentences? I came, I saw, I concurred. If you take the standard formula, subject, verb, and object, and you judge these sentences based on that standard formula, you will see that no, it is not. They are not complete. Right? Which is, they are not normal, they are crooked. So at a sentence level also, it is possible that deviation can take place. And all idioms, right, as you so you read, is not a complete sentence. Not even it gives the meaning of the words that are there in the sentence. As you sow, so you reap. The words are something else, the meaning is something else. So this crookedness, the vakrukti, may happen at any of these 6 levels according to Kuntaka, right? I hope it is making sense, and I hope you are able to follow my explanation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. So I think we'll move on to uh, another topic, if possible. We're done with this one. Okay, so before we move to the next fresh topic, let me quickly tell you that we took up 4 different classical literary traditions, uh, which is uh, Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, right? And Abhinava Gupta's Rasa theory, and then you have Vakrokti by Kuntaka and Panini's Astirgya. So please remember all these things. Any of these things may come as part of Indian literary traditions, as part of Indian literature, or as part of uh, as distinct as any of the name of the theory. Okay, we'll move on to the next topic now.
So you're there?
Yeah. I'm here.
Okay, sir.
I'm just starting a new topic. We are done with that Indian literary traditions. We are starting a new topic. Yes. So yeah. So our new topic is language and narration.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Narrative, narration, and narrator. Okay. Narrative is the description of the event. We call it. We may also call it as, or we may remember it as story. Right. Narration. What is being said. Narrative is the event, whereas narration is the way it is said, and then narrator, the one who said it. Okay. Now again, I need some volunteer to read this piece, this example.
So narrator means the story is narrated by the third person.
You please read this example. We'll discuss that.
Okay, you're giving the example, or you want me to give the example?
Just please read this example on the screen.
The narrator is the storyteller, sir, and the narrative is the story itself, and the narration is the story told, that is told, sir. Correct, to create the complete storytelling experience. So, example for the narrator is, she felt a strange chill as she stepped into an abandoned house. That's the narrator. The narrative would be the event of the character is stepping into the abandoned house and feeling a chill. That's the narrative. The narration would be the act of the narrator telling us about the character's experience and feelings.
Sir should read the example, sir.
That's what I requested. You just read the example
Okay,
given on the
sir.
screen.
I will read it, sir. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the wild wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him.
Thank you. One more volunteer, please.
Repeat the same thing, sir. You want me to read the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the wild wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, through though not quickly enough to prevent the swirl of gritty dust from entering alone with him, by George Orwell, from the novel George Orwell in 1984.
Thank you. It is actually, the name of the novel is 1984, written by George Orwell.
George Orwell.
Yeah, is the author, and name of the novel is 1984.
You, sir.
A very famous novel. Okay. Yeah. So before we go and talk about narrative, narration, and narrator, I want to, as a teacher, I want to advise you on one thing regarding how to read it. If you allow me, how to read any English text.
Yes, sir. Please go.
If you're interested, then
Yes.
I can give you some tips on that.
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, I told you that, when we speak a language and write a language, both are not same, right? When we speak, we take meaningful pauses. It stops. So that the person who is listening to me, or the people who are listening to me, should be able to understand me, right? Now, I'll demonstrate a couple of ways of reading it. It was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the wild wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. From the novel 1984 by George Orwell. This is one way of reading.
This what you read was a very monotonous tone. There was no, intonation.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you. I'm not inviting any comment on how I read it. I'm demonstrating it, and I'll tell you the proper way of reading it. This is what people who are not familiar with the reading skill would do, and people, especially those who are non-native to any language, would do that. But if you are a native to the language, if you know the reading skills, and if you understand the language, then your way of reading would be different. Like, for example, it was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the wild wind, slipped quickly through the glass of doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. From the novel 1984 by George Orwell. Now you may find the first demonstration being completely different from the second one. Do you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, which one do you think is more engaging and making more
Second
sense?
time you read.
Second time, right?
Second time.
Now, I am not a native speaker, nor do you. But not being a native speaker is not an issue. Not knowing the reading skills is an issue. Because, as I told you, when you go out into the market, into the society, as a person who has done master's degree in English, people immediately expect, as I told you earlier also, that you know English very well. You might be able to speak fluently, right? And you may carry a dictionary worth vocabulary with you. This is the expectation of the society from people who do masters in English. So, isn't it necessary for people like you and I to correct our basics before we go into the society? Right? It is necessary, right? So that is why.
Yeah.
Now, you always remember language starts with spoken language, especially starts with words and then move on to phrase. For example, in my reading, I was able to break the larger sentences into different tone of phrases. And I was able to pay some focus in some specific words. Like name of a person, Winston Smith, or Victory Mansions, or Cold Day. These are the few places where I emphasized, because those are the words that carries more load, more meaning. So first, in the first particular sentence, first sentence on the screen, it was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Now you can break this whole sentence into at least two parts, two meaningful parts. What are those? It was a bright cold day in April. That is first part. The second part is, and the clocks were striking 13. Now you remember, whenever you find a comma signifies pause. And technically it is half pause, whereas period is a full pause.
And also, it's a continuation of the sentence.
Yes. So when it comes to reading, wherever you find a comma which signifies, you can take a half pause. You need not have to rush immediately to and immediately after April. That is one point or one important indicator when it comes to reading skill. Number one, wherever there is a punctuation marks, whether it's comma, full stop, exclamation mark, colon, semicolon, all those signifies pause in spoken language. So wherever you find a comma or any of the punctuation, it means you can pause. You can give some split second time to your reader to reflect. Second, you can also break the sentence if it is larger just before the preposition. In the first sentence, it was a bright cold day in April. Does it make sense? when you hear it?
Yes, sir.
It
Yes,
does,
yes.
right? Even though I'm breaking the sentence, you don't have any confusion when you hear it. Your mind can, stitch it together. So it means just before preposition also, you can break it in, to, into, right? And also before conjunctions, like
Yes, sir.
in the case of, the clocks and the clocks,
And because,
right? So these are two important things. If you just keep in mind, your reading will be much different from your previous, attempt. And then most of the people.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
So
Sure.
this will help for
Yeah.
narration.
Now coming to narrator, narrative, and narration. We know narrator is a person who tells the story, right? Narrator is the person who tells the story, whereas narration is the use of a written or spoken commentary to convey a story to an audience. Okay, and which is usually done by a narrator. Right. Whereas narrative is nothing but an account of actual or imagined events. I hope these three distinctions are clear to you. Now, when we read this one, this particular example, it was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the wild wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions. Though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. Now we have the narrative, we have the narration, but who is the narrator? So who is telling this story?
The other,
Eh,
the judge,
Narrator.
hmm?
the
The
author of the
narrator,
Somebody
the
said
narrator
author.
is giving the narrative.
author of the novel.
Yeah, author of the novel. So
Novel.
here, the author of the novel is not the narrator. He is the writer of the story. A writer is actually a living person. The producer of the story, the writer of the story. But narrator is somebody else.
One of the characters.
Yes, so we'll see that, narrator could
So
be,
you were narrating to us, Nasa.
no,
So
no,
you were the narrator just now who was speaking
no,
the
no, no,
words
no,
about
no,
it, the bright cold day in April.
no, I am not the narrator. The narrator is the person who is telling this story in original. We are reusing that story. This person who is demonstrating this or teaching this will not become a narrator of this story. Narrator could be a character within the
The
story
person,
who's telling the story. Narrator could be somebody who is absent in the story but telling it from outside.
okay.
Yes,
Right.
yes. That,
The one who is creating the story is not a narrator. Remember this. In this case, George Orwell or any other writer can never be a narrator of the story, because any writer has a physical existence, material existence, whereas the story being created is an imaginary story.
So the writer is the
writer only. Either the
Yeah.
person telling the story could be one of the characters who is telling, or could be someone who is outside the story, like
So
hidden.
the writer is the creator of the story.
Yes, he is the only creator of the story. He
Acha.
doesn't have any role
But
in
but
narration.
is he not the narrator or the narration or the
No,
narratee? Nothing of the
no,
sort.
no,
Okay.
nothing like that. Nothing like
Okay.
that. Hmm?
narration
Because
depends upon context, sir. And the
both,
context is
see,
explaining.
narration and narrator are imaginative, stuff, which has nothing to do with the writer who is producing it.
Yes.
Now, if a writer is producing 10 different characters in a story, does that mean he is the person who is living all these 10 different lives? No, no, not at all. The actual life of that writer would be something different. Got my point?
Yes, sir. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's imaginative.
It's imaginative, and it's imaginative, and the story as well as the one who is telling the story
So
are
the
fictional,
narrator and the narrated.
imaginative. And we are not talking about narrative here. We'll come to that. So first thing is, we have a narrative here, and somebody is telling the story. In this particular case, the narrator is not visible, is absent. That narrator is beyond this story. He is some outsider who is looking at things and telling to somebody else. So this kind of narrator, we call it as omniscient narrator.
Please give me an example now. It says
Example
that
is, God is an omniscient, but you don't see him.
now,
Right.
sir, in a drama, uh, who's the narrator now? The person who's speaking from behind the scene is the narrator? Please give me an example. Is that correct, what I said, sir? No.
In drama, the story unfolds through the dialogue of characters. I speak something, he speaks something, and that is how the story is unfolded. So drama as a literary form is slightly different from fiction. I hope you got my point.
Yes, sir. But
In
my
drama, you
question
need
is
not require an
a
omniscient
narrator.
narrator, somebody from outside to narrate the story. The
Okay,
character,
sir.
when they speak to each other, it becomes a story.
But sir, there are some people when the drama is going on,
They
they
play
speak
the
from behind.
role. Yeah, they play the role of narrator themselves, because they are the one who is narrating the story. So drama as a
Actually, sir, in case of a monologue, one character will speak to audience, no?
yes. So
So
he's the
what is
one who
that?
is telling everything.
Oh,
There is no additional perspective. In case of fiction, you have different perspectives. Perspective of a character who is within the story and is telling about other characters.
Yes.
And there is a possibility of another perspective, that is somebody who is not involved in the story, who is outside the story, and he is looking at that and he's telling that. about different people, different things.
Thank you, sir.
So this example is of the second one. That is where the character is the person who is telling the story. Uh, the the one who is telling the story is not involved in the story as a character. He's outside the story. From outside, he's telling it. So he has a larger omniscient perspective. He's not there, but who is also there from outside. Like God. God is not involved in human affairs directly, right? In the form of any being, whether it's human being or any other form, but he is the one who is present everywhere through his interventions. And that is why he is able to tell everything about everybody and everything. So that kind of perspective is omniscient perspective. So this particular example is an example of an omniscient narrator, which is the narrator who is not part of the story, who is telling it from outside. Okay.
Okay, sir.
This is about perspective. This is about perspective. Narrator is always about perspective. Perspective of one of the character in this story. Perspective of somebody who is not part of the story but telling it from outside. Okay. Now, if it is a character who's telling this same example, then the language would be different. Like, it was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13 when I came to the palace, or I came to the mansion. So here, which means the person who is telling the story is in this story. Okay. So that way you will have first person narrative, second person narrative, and third person narrative. Three different persons, possible narratives are there. Okay. Yeah. So when you take a text as an example, so you will have an author, the one who is writing it, who has physical existence, and the one who is telling the story, which is a character or non-character. Then narrative, to whom it is narrated. Every story is narrated to somebody, right?
Yes.
So that narrative, and then you, who is reading it, which means this story is not necessarily written for you, but you are reading. I'll give you an example to make things more comprehensible. Now, who wrote Upanishad or Vedas? Who is the writer of Upanishads or Vedas? Or who is the writer of? Can you name any saint who has written it, or any other text, for example, Mahabharata or Ramayana?
Valmiki.
Vedavyasa, sir. Vedavyasa.
Vedavyasa wrote
Valmiki?
what? Valmiki wrote what? Ramayana?
Yes.
Valmiki wrote Ramayana.
Yes.
Vyasa Mahabharata. Vedavyasa.
Mahabharata.
He wrote Vedas also. I think so.
We are not sure about that. Whatever we are sure, we'll go forward with that.
In
So, for example,
name itself Vedavyasa, sir. In the name itself, Vyasa.
They say that it was written by the rishis.
Okay, yeah, we'll not go into that discussion of who wrote Upanishads and Vedas, because there are a lot of contradictions to that. But coming to Mahabharata and Ramayana, there is a consensus,
Valmiki.
right? Yeah, Valmiki has written
Ramayana.
Ramayana. Yes, we'll take that as an example. Now, in case of one text, that is Ramayana, right? we have one author, that is Valmiki. Now, if you read Ramayana, you will find that there are there are narrators who is not Valmiki. Valmiki is not the narrator. Somebody else is there. You have some stories in Ramayana, right? And those stories are told by some either character or outside, narrator. Now that story is told to somebody. Why? Those particular stories are told for a specific kind of audience. So that is what narrative is. Now, if you and I are reading it, we become readers. We are not narrated to whom it is narrated. Got my point?
Yes, sir.
So this is a clear distinction from a literary point of view. Right? Narrator is not author. The way you got clarification today. Similarly, narrative is not reader. Okay. Reader has a physical existence. Author has a physical existence, whereas narrator and narrative are part of fictional realm.
They are fictional. They're not present.
Yes. Okay. Now we have some more explanation when it comes to these things. Just quickly look at it. And then we'll close the class for today and we'll continue the discussion in our next class. We had this, yes, one second. I'll just take a screen.
Page
shot
number
of-
140 it is.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, you can find it out where it is.
This is on page number 140.
Yes. Real author, the one in flesh and blood. Implied author, the one constructed or inferred by the reader who might have written. The narrator, the one who tells the tale. Maybe present example you don't know about. Narrative, like the studio audience in a TV show, they love but are rarely seen. So you don't know me. Implied reader, imaginary reader, a real reader, the one in flesh and blood. Okay, this is what we actually try to understand in a simplified way in the previous slide. Okay. With this, I think we shall close the class for today, and we'll meet in the next class. And I really, thank you for.
I thank you. We thank you, sir, for all your efforts, and it's a very important topic. And today we got some kind of, little bit of clarity. But I can say not, 100%, but definitely we'll be able to scribble something if this topic comes. But
And actually, just now I saw some messages here in the text in the what is chat. Somebody is saying that very confusing because you're saying some and teaching something else. No, in the very beginning of the class, I told you the paper title, right? There is some emergency because of that reason, a class is, switched. One of the teacher who was supposed to take at 10, she couldn't take it because of some personal, issue or engagement. So she requested me to come at this time, and I'm taking it. And before we started this, we actually, I mentioned which paper we are dealing with, right? People who are regular, they know already what paper it is, and they also know who I am, right? So I think that is not an issue. And somebody said this topic is not in the textbook. So please tell that gentleman or lady that the page number on which we have this topic. Okay. So thank you so much for being
Yes, sir.
online with me and making this class meaningful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Hopefully
so
we'll
much.
see,
Sir,
we'll meet next.
excuse
Yeah.
me. Excuse
Yeah.
me, sir. Kindly please share your PPT, sir.
Yeah, I'll do it.
In the group.
Yeah, I'll do
It's a
it.
request.
Okay.
Very true. Thank you,
Sure.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Once we are done with the classes, we'll share it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.